And a company who might not have exhibited empathy starts doing it during the pandemic. If they continue to do it post-pandemic, then they will earn a lot of trust points. My fear is companies are saying, oh, well, they're doing it, then I guess I need to do empathy. And then when we're out of this pandemic, that's done with. Those are the companies that are going to have problems.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Engati CX. I'm Aish, and for this episode, we have the pleasure of welcoming Sue Duris to our interview series. But before we dive in, let's begin with a quick introduction of Engati. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code chatbot platform, available across 14 channels with 30,000 bots, created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has been recognized as a top platform by Inc.com, TechWorld, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, the video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 300,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest. Sue Duris is the Director of Marketing and Customer Experience at M4 Communications. Based in Palo Alto, California, M4 Communications is a strategic marketing and customer experience consultancy that helps early and mid-stage startups, nonprofits, and ed-tech firms develop their brands. She writes and speaks often on marketing, customer experience topics, and has been recognized by CMO, Forbes, and many others. In addition, she hosts #CXChat, a weekly Twitter chat show to educate companies on enhancing their customer experience and employee experience. So welcome to the show, Sue. We're so glad to have you.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and I'm thrilled to be here talking about customer experience. CX is like my favorite thing to chat about.
Great. So let's start with our first question. So when designing a CX program, companies often struggle to measure success. Which metrics do you consider quantifiable, and how do we keep track of the metrics that can't necessarily be measured?
Well, I like the little plan that Forrester introduced a few years ago. And in it, there are three types of metrics. There's perception metrics. There's, and I have my notes here because I'm getting older and Alzheimer's might be kicking in anytime soon. Perception metrics, descriptive metrics, and outcome metrics, and I'll explain both. So perception metrics is basically how a customer would perceive how you're doing, what you're doing, how they feel about the different interactions that they have with your brand. So the metrics in there would be Net Promoter Score, NPS, the CSAT, Customer Effort Score, CES. So those are scores taken based on the perceptions that they have. Descriptive metrics are actual observations. So that would be first contact resolution in the contact center, average handle time, things of that nature that you're actually observing things that are happening. Mm-hmm. And then the third piece is outcome metrics. And outcome metrics to me it's kind of a call to action, a CTA, based on somebody's perception of you. So, for instance, it might be they take action in scheduling a demo or downloading a trial or even converting, actually purchasing and renewing, and even wanting to be in a loyalty or advocacy program.
Right.
So those three customer metrics, plus you always have to align to operational metrics. How things are going. Are you growing? Mm-hmm. Are customers renewing? Are they taking actions along the customer journey? So those two things need to be tied together to be able to actually improve your customer experience and drive growth.
Yeah, of course. So how about the metrics that can't necessarily be measured? Because there's certain things that obviously you can't necessarily measure engagement or things like that, right? So how do we keep track of things such as this?
Well, there's a couple of things that you can do. And with me, it always comes down to the voice of the customer.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a voice of the customer program, yeah, you're doing surveys, you're recording those things, but there's something, a phrase that I'm sure you've heard of called unstructured data.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times that will come up in surveys. It will be the free form responses that'll be on third parties, such as Gcrowd and Trustpilot, that there'll be little notations. I like them, but they're fabulous, blah, blah, blah. And other third parties where your customers and your would-be customers are going, that you always have to take the pulse of sentiment analysis. And in addition to all of that, what I do, and I advise really anybody who will listen on Twitter when I'm talking in CX chat or LinkedIn or whatever, and that's, you have to reach out to at least one customer a day. And you can talk with them for 10 minutes and asking two questions. How are you? And what is that one thing I can improve for you that will help you be more successful? Mm-hmm. It's amazing what we find out if we're an active listener and we read between the lines. I mean, there's a lot of things to be gleaned from that information. The question is, from a CX professional, and I'm talking to all of you out there, that are you willing to go the extra mile to improve customer experience and drive growth?
I think, yeah, that's going to help a lot of people, especially the tip that you mentioned about talking to your customers every day for 10 minutes. That's a brilliant tip. So
and they appreciate it too, because they're not expecting it.
Oh yeah.
And I'll mention this in another question because I wrote this note down, but it's interesting how all of our channels aren't aligned when we do omni-channel customer experience. And I know that Salesforce did a couple of years ago, recent survey, and one of the insights that came out from that survey is by 2020, they were expecting over 50% of their respondents, that they said this, that they're expecting that each channel is aligned and it's consistent. So if you go in the store versus downloading an app versus email versus talking to a representative of the company, it should be the exact same experience. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they're starting to think, do I really trust this company with helping me to be successful? That's what happens.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's why we've seen that chatbots are a really popular tool in customer experience. I think that's why it's so important for chatbots to be able to deploy the same sort of conversation across multiple channels.
Absolutely.
Making a bot per channel, because there's obviously going to be some sort of inconsistency, and customers kind of pick up on that.
They are very astute. Mm-hmm. Nothing gets by them, because they know if my expectation isn't met, there's a competitor I can go to.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So moving on to my next question, how can we transform customer experience programs into marketing channels for the company? Can you share any example of a SaaS company that you've built the CX program for?
Well, I'm currently building a CX program for a blockchain company in the UK. And actually, this question is very appropriate to this company, because we're looking at, and we've looked at all these different channels. And it can't be, that's develop the customer experience around the channel. It has to be the channels around the customer experience. Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean that where the customer is where they want to do business, where they want to engage. And that you may have to your you may have access to 10 different channels, but do you really want to spend the time, energy, and cost developing out all those channels? Or do you want to focus on those channels that your customers are at? It's a very similar response to back when the social media started. People were thinking, oh, well, there's LinkedIn, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's Reddit, I'm sure I'm missing a Tumblr or what. Do I have to have a presence at each one of those channels? And the answer is no, you don't. You should be, it's all about real estate, and it's location, location, location. Mm-hmm. And you have to be where your customer is, and then you can build out and spend the time and prioritize at that point. You may have done your research, created the strategy, done the data, and you've come up with, okay, there's 5 channels that my customers are at, mm-hmm. our customers are at. And at that point, you want to maybe prioritize what's the biggest channel, or what's the most important channel. And you can even run a survey on that. Ask your customers. It's so important to validate these things with the customer, not just, oh, well, our customers are there, so they must like it there, without really getting their feedback. Because you guys know, you're all about engagement, that if you're not listening to your customer, you're not really you're getting false positives on what the true engagement mm-hmm. data is really telling you. So that's how I would look at things. I'd look at, okay, we have a CX strategy. We know what we want to do. We want to have omni-channel, and we want to be consistent and aligned across everything. What should we start with? What are those key channels? Mm-hmm. Go from there.
That kind of ties in with my with one of my questions, which was, should we prioritize the customer or the channel in which we target the customers when designing an omni-channel CX program? Which one do you think is more important?
Well, I think there's definitely a balance, but you can't do anything with it without the customer. Again, why spin your wheels on email? Let's use that as an mm-hmm. example. When we all know that if you have an app, or even software, a web-based software, you want to be able to communicate inside that app while they're taking action, while they're doing steps, because, and if you build it intelligently enough, if somebody is stumbling on something, you see their online behavior, and they keep on going back and forth on different things, you're watching their movements, then you can get in on a message and say, hey, can we help you? And give them an option, either self-service, here are some tools, or a live agent can come in and help them. Mm-hmm. So think in-app, in product is very important. Email, I don't want to discount email. Email might be important for a particular company, but still you have to do the data and look to see what are those key channels. Mm-hmm. And it might even be a channel that you haven't even thought about. We know that the chatbot's important. I would definitely say, and one thing that drives me crazy as a consumer is I'll go to a chatbot and I'll ask a question and they'll give me the FAQs, but I asked a different question and you're still giving me the same FAQs. It needs to be, that's where we talk about conversational AI, and it needs to be intelligent. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the next wave. I know a lot of companies are taking that approach, and really looking at, okay, what do we need to do to make our tools more intelligent? Because we know that we always have to be ahead of customer expectations, and that's the only constant. is that customer expectations change frequently and regularly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we have to have the tools to keep up with those changes.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Which is why I guess we're seeing a lot of for example, you mentioned chatbots, but chatbot technology is becoming so sophisticated these days now that with things like DocuSense, you can kind of just type in the keyword and a chatbot can pick it up and answer your question. And if it can't, then you need to find a solution that can hand over the query over to a live agent as seamlessly as possible.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have options too, because not everybody wants that live agent. They want to have the self-service too.
Yeah.
But if they're not getting their question answered in self-service, they have to have a place to go. Mm-hmm. That's what they will appreciate, that you're looking out for them and helping them basically make their experience as effortless as possible.
Mm-hmm. And I guess something that companies also need to keep in mind is what their audience is, because certain people kind of prefer certain options. Like some legacy customers might appreciate emails more. So how do you kind of strike that balance and get it right each time, I guess?
Well, we're not perfect. We try, and that's where customer persona development is really important. Looking at your segments, looking at your personas. I mean, you don't want to create a different journey for each customer. That'll drive yourself crazy. Mm-hmm. And someone like myself who has thick hair will end up pulling a lot of hair out. It's all about segmenting customer persona and then creating that journey. Just a quick discussion on journey management. You can do journey mapping two different ways. You can actually have the customer in the room, or your key folks, whatever part of the journey map that you're looking at, go in there and have a discussion. Okay, what is actually happening with the customer? But you want to make sure that you overlay data as well as understand where the moments of truth, where those listening posts should be. And after you do that, if the customer is not in the room, you absolutely must validate with the customer. So many companies don't do that last piece, and then they wonder why they have all these gaps and customers are frustrated. Mm-hmm. So, it's being very methodical about customer experience and your journey mapping specifically.
Mm-hmm. I guess feedback also kind of ties in with this. So when implementing and executing a program, how can we incorporate the customer's feedback to fine-tune the program, the product, and the content strategies?
Well, that's where closed loop feedback mechanisms are worth, they're golden nuggets. Mm-hmm. They're worth the investment. And if I'm saying to anybody that's looking at CX, and they have their strategy and they're saying, Sue, I'm going to spend money today. I want to know, what should I spend my money on? And it's in its voice of the customer. Mm-hmm. And remember that the voice of the customer, I have to get my little promo on employee experience, that there's two types of customers. There's the internal customer and the external customer. And there's so much data now that, Bruce Temkin and the folks at Qualtrics XM Institute really do a good job at getting down to those specifics, that and doing the surveying, that there's just too much data out there that shows that when you have a good employee experience, they're going to become engaged employees. And employee engagement, we know that it drives revenue. It drives, if you're a public company, your earnings per share is going to go up. And very most importantly, it drives the customer experience. Because just think about it. If you calling into a contact center, and the person doesn't sound very friendly or even interested in you, do you really want to continue having that conversation with them? I know I don't. Mm-hmm. And so it's a domino effect. Everything is connected to everything. I don't know. I took science. I was good at science. I just can't remember the quote, but all matter is connected. Mm-hmm. And everything in the universe is connected. And just showing how employee experience is connected to customer experience, which drives more customer engagement and growth. It is a good key. Along those lines is where you look at where are your gaps in your customer experience, and certain places that you do research on. Okay, where is the moment of truth? A good moment of truth is converting to become a customer. Okay, it can go one of two ways, excellent or not. And so you have to have the right things in place, the right handoffs in place, whatever your corporate culture is, how you do things. Another thing is renewing. Another thing, another moment of truth. Another one is when after you've renewed and you're trying to get them into a loyalty program, or what I deem more important, an advocacy program, because you want to drive that customer lifetime engagement and that customer life cycle to make it as long as you possibly can. So having listening posts at different places of the journey, that's one thing. And just listening, like I said in our first question, being an active listener, because you can pick up things from not only customers, not only online behaviors, but in the field. What a customer service rep is saying, what a salesperson is saying, what your field field operations are saying. All those things you have to take into consideration. And then, of course, things are going to happen. That there is a problem that happens. You get your team together to resolve what the customer has indicated. You prioritize whatever you need to do, but you should be giving that customer an update. And they will appreciate it. And you have to be as proactive as you can with this. And if you're constantly keeping them updated, and then when it is resolved, don't just make the assumption, oh, it's resolved, it's good. No, it's resolved, and you have to go back to the customer and say, just want to let you know, we've figured out the issue, we've resolved the issue, this is how we've resolved it, and you should be good to go. However, if things don't work out, please contact me as quickly as possible, and we will resolve it. So things of that nature, putting those things in place are really going to drive that customer experience.
Mm-hmm. It's almost comforting when a customer service rep tells the customer, hey, it's been resolved, but if you need anything else, let us know. And
yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And I think also I think this has been amplified by the pandemic, but I think we're slowly starting to realize how everything is super connected. Like the customer service team and the sales team, they deal with the customer first. And when receiving feedback from that, you can improve your product, and even the marketing strategies can get improved as well. So I think that's definitely been amplified with this pandemic.
Oh, absolutely. And empathy is so important. And my fear, this is my one fear, that companies that were already using empathy to talk with customers and continue through this pandemic and maybe go empathy on steroids, depending on what the customers want, that builds trust. Mm-hmm. And a company who might not have exhibited empathy starts doing it during the pandemic. If they continue to do it post-pandemic, then they will earn a lot of trust points. My fear is companies are saying, oh, well, they're doing it, then I guess I need to do empathy. And then when we're out of this pandemic, that's done with. Those are the companies that are going to have problems.
Mm-hmm. I think that it kind of feels like they're jumping on a bandwagon, and as soon as it's over, they kind of bounce back. But I don't think at this point there's not a normal we can bounce back to. Everything has changed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you there.
Mm-hmm. So for my final question, are there any thoughts you'd like to share with our audience?
I run a Twitter chat. It's a 1 hour long Twitter chat, #CX chat. And it's all about, it's really a platform, a forum where CX and employee experience professionals can learn, engage, can share ideas about customer experience. And it's every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. British summertime. And I don't know what it is Indian time, but it's a global forum that everybody's welcome. Even if you don't understand what is the CX beast about? What's customer experience about? Join. Everybody is so wonderful there. So there is another chat that I want to also promote. It's called ICMI chat. It's #I, letter C, letter M, letter I chat. It's 10 a.m. Pacific time, Tuesdays, 1 p.m. 1 p.m. Eastern time, and this is Tuesdays. They talk about how to make a more robust contact center. But customer experience is very important in the contact center because many times we believe that, or I do, I'm a big believer that customer experience tends to start in the contact center because many times a customer service rep is that first line to the customer, and they drive advocacy, they drive customer lifetime value. I believe that the contact center is its own profit center. So the reason that I'm bringing it up is I was on the chat this week, and we were asked what contact center reps can do to make themselves more value add in their company. And I think this applies to anybody, customer experience. Number one, you have to really have a growth mindset in your DNA. Always wanting to learn. I have a thing that if I'm not learning something every day, it's not the best day. And it could be so trivial. But if I'm learning that new nugget, it's a good day. So definitely having a growth mindset. I'm looking at my list here because I know I'm not going to remember what I actually said. It's so important to be customer first all the time. It's important to recognize that there are internal and external customers. You're not just catering to your external customers, but your internal customers. You want to be willing to help them be successful as well. Fourth, be data-driven. Data isn't the story, but it supports the story. And always looking to how can I do something that's going to improve us. And then the fifth thing is having the realization and the drive to basically looking at your own team and helping to align that team with other teams in an effort to drive customer experience across the organization. That's what's going to drive growth. So long-winded, and yes, I did get that in a tweet.
Yes, thank you. And yes, would highly recommend the audience to definitely check out CX Chat. And you said ICMI Chat?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So awesome. So thank you so much, Sue, for giving us your time. Your insights were really valuable. And I know our audience is really going to enjoy this interview.
Well, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate being asked and always love to share CX with everybody.
Mm-hmm. Definitely check out the 2 chats that she mentioned. So we'll be back with a new episode with a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned and we'll see you around for the next one. Bye, everyone.